Well, even if you're living well, I want you to empathize and sympathize with those people who have faced unemployment, those people who have children whom they just cannot afford to feed. Every bill that's passed is not just about the individual, it's about the community. And if one member in the community is hurting, the entire community can fail.
Welcome back to the program. So joining me now to weigh in on the president's address to the nation is Dr. Frita. She is the owner and founder of Midtown Atlanta Nephrology. Thanks for joining me today, Doc. Good to see you as always.
Thank you. Good to see you as well.
Yeah, what a moment last night when the president addressed the issue at hand, COVID-19, the pandemic, and describing for each and every one of us as the consoler-in-chief, if you will, and the encourager-in-chief about what we've been through this past year. I want to ask you from a medical point of view, what you have seen people go through this past year with regard to COVID.
It has been horrific, to put it in a word, Kelly. I've seen people go through denial initially, thinking, oh, they're just blowing this whole thing up. COVID is like the flu, we'll get over it. To some acceptance as people and my patients have started seeing other people get COVID-19. My dialysis patients in particular have witnessed more than their fair share of people die from COVID-19, to some people just throwing their hands up and kind of almost giving up. And now we're a year from when the pandemic first started. And even though we have the light at the end of the tunnel, we've got the vaccinations coming, we've got therapeutics, we also have some people, including some states, some governments, who are just ignoring some of the lessons which should have been learned from COVID. So it's just been horrific in many ways. And now I'm optimistic, but I'm really in amazement of all of the different facets that this pandemic has brought out of the people and the government as well.
Yeah, when you were talking, you were making me think about the fact that many people are still politicizing the wearing of a mask, or even politicizing getting the COVID vaccine. You are a doctor who has experienced getting that vaccination. You've received both of your vaccinations. And tell me about that, because I think what's happening out there, Doc, is that a lot of people of color, people who are not Black Americans, are still showing some signs of vaccine hesitancy with regard to some of the political pressure from anti-vax groups.
This is true. And I actually believe that we are now getting closer to more vaccine acceptance, but indeed hesitancy is still an issue. Now for me, yes, I received both of my doses of the Pfizer vaccination. I received them weeks ago at this point. And so I am one of those fully vaccinated people the CDC talks about. I felt that it was very important for me as a physician, a healthcare provider, and as a Black woman to lead by example. I understand that we have so many people, some are hesitant, some are saying they absolutely will never trust a vaccine. Others are just critical thinkers and they need to wait and see what happens. And so I've told everyone, if you need to wait and see what happens after you get the vaccination, you can wait and see me, because I've gotten it, my parents have gotten it. Any of my patients at this point who have been offered the vaccination, they've all accepted it and they've gotten it, because what they understand is that we have over 530,000 deaths in the United States alone. Our death rate is up 15% over 2020 just due to the pandemic. And so this is real. And when you think about Blacks, we are disproportionately hospitalized. We're disproportionately dying. And so for me, it was so important to lead by example, to get the vaccination and to show people, even if they do have some hesitancy, they can move on over to acceptance so that we can put this pandemic behind us.
Yeah, you're right. It is a matter of life and death. It's just that clear and just that stark. Do you think people, based on what the president discussed last night, would now trust him in his efforts to get the vaccinations distributed to the Black community, the brown community, the Native American communities, those communities that have been marginalized and often forgotten and have gone through the health disparities that the COVID-19 has so vividly revealed?
I certainly think that President Biden's address will get us closer to people, specifically people who are mistrusting of government officials, of the medical field. I think he made a wonderful step because his address was so empathetic. He didn't just stand up there and say, hey, everybody, look at me. I've gotten 2 million people vaccinated. We've been putting out 2 million doses a day. Hey, everybody, look at me. We've got 10% of the population of the United States fully vaccinated. Hey, everyone, look at me. He didn't make it about himself. He made it about us as a country. In fact, he said, and I quote, I need you. He made it clear that he is in it for everyone, for all Americans. And his whole posture was very empathetic. It was not a brag fest. It was about a very real pandemic and lives lost and living as we know it lost. And so certainly, I think he's put himself in a position. Also, Kelly, the way that he gives us dates. Now, we've already seen that this administration tends to under-promise and over-deliver, which is pretty good. So when he tells us that every adult will be eligible for a vaccine by May 1st, and he tells us that he's anticipating us living life close to a normal fashion by the 4th of July, you can just about bet that he's done the science, he's looked at the data, and there's a great chance that we will get there. The only caveat is these variants. Now, if people continue to go out without masks, if states continue to open just wide open, where they are opening up restaurants without restrictions, amusement parks without restrictions, that could be a problem in the plan, because if these variants are allowed to multiply and to grow, then our timeline could be altered. That's why he said, I need you. I need you, Americans, to still wear masks, still physically distance, still be smart until we get there. We're almost there, but we're not there yet. We only have just over 10% of the population vaccinated, which is wonderful, but we got to get to that 75%, 80% in order to get that herd immunity.
I want to take a break, and when I come back, I'd like to talk to you a little bit deeper about that herd immunity, how we get there, and how everybody is getting on board with this, how you as a doctor can help do that. That's next. Welcome back to the program. So we're talking all things COVID-19 and, of course, the American Rescue Plan that has now been signed into law, and the President of the United States talking about that last night. Joining me now is Dr. Frita. She is the owner and founder of Midtown Atlanta Nephrology. Doc, you deal a lot in the space of kidney treatment and dialysis. And you were mentioning in the previous segment how many of your patients have seen the horrors and the devastation of this COVID-19 pandemic. Make it abundantly clear, if you will, to those watching who are still watching this entire process with any degree of skepticism or cynicism. It's not a time for that. We have to be on a war footing and join in this fight together, right?
Absolutely. So yes, I am a nephrologist. I'm a kidney doctor, and I'm the medical director of a nonprofit dialysis unit. Now, a year ago, when the whole world shut down, essentially, we were all told to shelter in place, don't go anywhere. Well, guess what? My dialysis patients had to go somewhere because they depend on going to that dialysis unit 3 times a week for their lifeline. So what does that mean? While we were able to sit at home, many of us, my dialysis patients had to crowd into public transportation and be transported to the dialysis units with other sick people. The physical distancing wasn't really an option for them. Also, many dialysis patients, because they tend not to make urine, well, in between treatments, their lungs can fill up with fluid, so they get short of breath. Now imagine dealing with patients who are short of breath and telling them to keep their masks on. Now they really tried to do due diligence, but many of them, just because they cannot breathe well with the masks, would slip those masks down. So now you have a lack of physical distancing and you have sick patients without masks. So unfortunately, the dialysis population has been hit disproportionately. Dialysis patients are more likely to contract COVID-19. Dialysis patients are more likely to die from COVID-19. And my patients personally have witnessed their friends in dialysis die this year. And so this month, March, is actually Kidney Disease Awareness Month. And I really want people to think about kidney patients when they are out and about, deciding that they're not going to wear masks or not going to physically distance, because kidney patients as a whole are more vulnerable to COVID-19. And so they really rely on the community to consider them and to continue to be smart and to be conscientious of others when it comes to this pandemic.
And, it is a problem in the Black community, given the disparities that we have. In full disclosure, I lost one of my best childhood friends to kidney disease. And I thought it was very insightful and sensitive for the President of the United States during his address to the nation last night to not only point out those 535,000 Americans that we've lost this past year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But then if you remember, Dr. Frita, he wanted to expound upon it by saying, and we have to remember those who have died of other diseases and other situations. So talk to me, if you will, about the mental stress this has placed on Americans like your patients, and how we must deal with the mental health aspects of all this as well, because the stress has been overwhelming. It's been out of control for so many people.
Yes, I thought that the president was so empathetic and sincere in bringing that out, because many of my patients, in addition to being concerned about COVID-19, well, I've had patients who have chest pain and they say, yeah, I had chest pain, but I didn't want to go to the hospital because of COVID. Or, yeah, I had a headache, or I had a little weakness and I couldn't walk well. I mean, they could have been having a stroke, but I didn't go to the hospital because of COVID. So yes, beyond the pandemic, beyond COVID-19, the other diseases are still here. We still have cancer. Heart disease is still the #1 killer in this country. But we've had people either neglecting going to the hospital because of the illnesses, or we've had the hospital systems being overwhelmed where they literally could not accommodate everyone. And they have had to say to people, you're not that sick, so if you could just please go home and come back when you really can't breathe. And so, yes, I thought that was excellent to bring that out. That is even bigger than just COVID. Yes, COVID is certainly the cause, it's the impetus, but it's larger than COVID. And so patients have really had to deal with quite a bit this year and last year.
The president is expected to tour Georgia. No doubt he will be coming to Atlanta, Georgia, along with the vice president. That's how important the state of Georgia is to them, from the aspects of the Georgia Senate runoff and the political things that went on in Georgia in terms of turning the tide for the election for himself as well as the vice president. What do you think that visit might look like, and will you be there when the president takes his tour of Georgia along with the vice president to talk about the American Rescue Plan?
I am so excited about the tour in Georgia. And of course, I practice medicine in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I've been right here in the hot spot with everything going on. This election year certainly was a turning point because, of course, as we all know, Georgia flipped the script this year and it became blue, which was something that was unheard of. But now it's more important than ever that democracy has its face in Georgia, because with all of the different bills being attempted to be passed, there has been some pretty overt attempts at voter suppression in Georgia. We've got people trying to push back the souls for the polls, trying to eliminate Sunday voting, and really trying to disenfranchise voters. And I know we've heard even from certain people, even the previous administration, actually saying that Stacey Abrams did a bad thing. All she did was motivate people to vote legally. And so it's very important. The whole world has its eye on Georgia. And so, yes, I'm happy that he's doing the tour. I will be here in Atlanta, and I want Georgia to keep its eye on the prize. And I just want everyone, not a specific group, everyone to exercise the right to vote, because now more than ever, Georgians see how important it is to get involved in the political process. And at times it can literally be a matter of life and death. In this time, it's most important that people understand that it's about the community. It's not just about you as an individual. And so I encourage people to get vaccinated so that we, the community, can have herd immunity and do our best to put this pandemic behind us. I encourage that people, even if you're living well, even if you have plenty of money, you don't need any extra help, I want you to empathize and sympathize with those people who have faced unemployment, those people who have children whom they just cannot afford to feed, those people who have had to shut down their businesses and they don't know how they're going to live. So every bill that's passed is not just about the individual, it's about the community. And if one member in the community is hurting, the entire community can fail. And so I want people to pay attention to their stress, pay attention to their bodies, and really just do your best to live your healthiest, your happiest lives, and we together will get through this.
Doctor's orders. Thank you, Dr. Frita. Appreciate you so much.